Hello, and welcome to this presentation on research concepts focused on low to intermediate ESL students. This video provides an overview of appropriate level research concepts and lessons with accompanying handouts for use in the classroom. With a focus on finding and evaluating information and resources, we chose a few practical, real-life situations that ESL students and their children may encounter. In developing and teaching curriculum at this level, many students are especially interested in lessons that can help their lives and that of their families. Therefore, we can see here in the second statement that one objective is related to using the internet to make doctor's appointments and find available apartments. We will also cover obtaining a library card and utilizing the resources at the library. In terms of resources, the objectives for this presentation also emphasize distinguishing between a reliable and unreliable source and being able to navigate the reliable sources. Therefore, teachers and students will have the fundamentals to apply to any research situation, but we will focus on these three key realistic situations in this particular case. Before we get into the information in this slide and talking about it with students, please make sure that your students understand how to access their web browser. Basic literacy in computer hardware and software is at least a whole nother seminar, but you can always use a site such as digitallearn.org or do a brief tutorial with your students to ensure that they know how to access a browser and they know what the common ones look like. So I would go over with them and show some Google images and such of Chrome, Safari, Internet Explorer, Firefox perhaps, talk to the students about what they may have available to them and perhaps what you have at your institution as well. So once you have that done, please make sure to go over the key vocabulary words related to this slide. So reliable and unreliable, do some flashcards, some visuals, some appropriate visuals, a thumbs up for reliable, thumbs down for unreliable, and go over those with your students first. Then focus on the fact that when we're searching the internet and looking for information, we need to focus on this first question. Who published the article or created the website? So I would write a big question on the board or on the projector. Who or where does this information come from? Then I'd make some categories on the board, a reliable category, an unreliable category, and let students know and write down .gov and .edu in the reliable category, again with some kind of appropriate symbol to emphasize that these are reliable sources, a thumbs up, smiley face, etc. Then, perhaps in the middle of reliable and unreliable, I'd have a question mark or something related to that. And this is where you'll want to put the .org and .com. To let students know they'll have to look further into these websites to see if they belong in the reliable or unreliable category. Please use this slide to further discuss reliable versus unreliable sources. So ask students first, what do they think a reliable website might have? Some possible answers maybe, and lead students to answering things like a date, names, name of an author, an address, etc. Then how about an unreliable source? Some possible answers you may get: no source information or dates, strange advertisements, things like that. And then we can take a good look at these websites here for some further discussion. So if the topic is looking for our local library, you can show students this is an example of a reliable source. This has the official looking symbol here. It has current dates with upcoming events at the library. some categories related to their hours, the people they serve, what they offer. And then if we look down, we have pictures of the branches of the library with the address in each of them and a phone number and driving directions. So these are all things you can talk about with your students to show them that this is a reliable source. And as a reminder, it's on the slide here. Then if we look further into this and we typed in local library in the computer, here's an example of an unreliable source. You'll want to talk to the students about the idea that this is a blog, meaning anyone can add their opinion and information. This is out of date, 2013. We have some vocabulary here, like cronies, that show that this is an opinion. So you want to tell students this would be an example of an unreliable source. Here's a slide that will help to encourage students to practice finding reliable and unreliable sources. First, give an example with finding a doctor as a topic. You'll want to show them, here is a reliable source. We have .gov, so we had already gone over that with the students, so they'll be able to tell that this is a reliable source even by looking at the name of the website. So you can click on that and show them this looks up to date with some information that we can see here. An unreliable source. No pictures. It looks like it's jaded because it's one particular company, not a lot of doctors' names from different companies. So you can talk over this with your students. And I think it's a good idea to have students practice the concept of finding some reliable and unreliable sources in the computer lab. You could give them a few topics and perhaps have them show you or print out one reliable source or one unreliable source. The topics could be related to current events such as the election or a life skill such as finding transportation. Could assign students in groups or individually to find a reliable source and unreliable source related to these topics for practice. Now let's discuss a few practical and meaningful assignments that will allow students to not only apply this knowledge of reliable and unreliable sources, but use key research skills while attaining valuable information for themselves and potentially their families. Explain to students that we'll be researching how to find a doctor online. Do some brainstorming as a group first. What are the important questions you would need to ask when looking for a doctor? So some potential answers that students might come up with are, who is this doctor for? What type of doctor am I looking for? Do I have health insurance? Does this doctor take my health insurance? I always try to encourage students to try to do something like this that they can actually use as long as they're comfortable. So really try to think about a doctor that someone in their family needs or may need soon. I always tell them it's going to mean a lot more, be a much more meaningful assignment if you actually do something that you'll be able to use in your life. You apply it and personalize it. So we then have a handout to do some pre-planning. is the doctor for? What type of doctor do you need? A dermatologist? This might be a good opportunity to have some vocabulary practice. Where would you like your doctor to be? What type of office would you prefer? Do they like a big doctor's office? Do they want something small where perhaps a person answers the phone versus a recording? Do you prefer to have a man or woman doctor? Do you prefer a bilingual doctor? And do you have health insurance? And does this doctor take your plan? So this will help students to really think about these key questions and write them down before they continue with the assignment. After we do the pre-planning assignment, you can really talk to students and perhaps have them share their answers that they came up with, again, if they're comfortable, and go over that with the class. Then you'll actually want students to go ahead and search for their doctor. So they already have their pre-planning guide, which we went over, and they have all their tips about reliable and unreliable sources, and the students will go ahead and complete the assignment to find a doctor. They'll want to provide a printed paper from the doctor's website or a reliable source related to that doctor, and make sure that the students highlight information that proves that the student found the actual doctor that they need. It's in your desired location, has the type of office you prefer, and works with your insurance. And then have students follow up with a brief writing, of course, appropriate for the level of students in your class, explaining why this doctor is a good choice for the student. So this will be the rubric for the actual assignment. Okay, back to the presentation. Another research assignment for students is to find available apartments online. Ask students, if it wasn't on the computer, where would you look for this information? Word of mouth, the flyers at the stores, things like that. And then tell them we're going to be using the internet and practicing finding reliable sources to help us locate an available apartment. Again, first talk as a class, what kind of questions would you need to ask in terms of finding an available apartment? So here's some possible answers here. School district, budget, utilities, and again, this can be a very good opportunity for some vocabulary. Just to note in here, I typically ask my students, or a lot of times I'll provide note cards so that when vocabulary comes up in class, they have an opportunity to write the word down on the front and then the definition on the back. Sometimes the best vocabulary lessons come from conversation like this. So I always tell my students to try to be prepared with note cards, and I also try to always have them in class as well. Just a little side note there. So with available apartments, again, we've made available a pre-planning worksheet and the assignment rubric as well. So let me show those to you real quick here. Here's the pre-planning sheet. How many bedrooms do you need? What area do you want to be in? Your budget, utilities, are heat and electric included? And how about any other preferences? A patio, do they have a pet? And then with this one, we've made available the rubric as well. Same instruction, use the pre-planning guide and your tips about reliable versus unreliable sources. And then here's the information that the students will want to provide for the assignment. And of course, you can tailor it to the needs of your particular classroom. Back to the presentation. The last assignment is concerning the library, and if at all possible, this is a wonderful field trip to take with your class. To start, have them all discuss where they're from and decide if everyone should be searching for the library that's close to your school, or if the students live further from the institution, perhaps helping them find the one that's closest to their house. And you could always ask the students what they prefer to do if that's appropriate in your class. So in this one, you'll want to have the computer lab or computers available in your classroom, laptops. This is something that you'll want to do together, and at the very least show them how to search on the internet. So you'll want to go to the browser, type in local library into the search. Again, you might want to have a quick vocabulary lesson about local, specific area that you're in. Have the students click on the library website and print directions to the library. This is an important life skill that you'll be able to go over with the students in utilizing the internet to help them get driving directions and maps to where they need to go. And you can do that as an example in front of your students first, or use a different library and then have them locate the library that's closest to them. And if possible, show them how to utilize finding the directions and printing those out. Then have students locate and print the requirements for obtaining a library card. And you'll want to talk to students about why we need the library card, why it's good for us to have this information. And then this is also a wonderful opportunity to go over the idea of proof of residency. And this is something you can talk with students about that they might have to provide for many other situations. This is a wonderful trip to take with your students to the library to actually obtain their library cards. It really gives the students a lot of confidence. This is something that myself and some of my colleagues have been able to do with our students because we're lucky to have a very close local library. After discussing the assignment, talk with the students about some questions that they might want to ask a librarian. Do you have a tutoring program? Does your library have a bilingual section? Does your library have a bilingual ESL coordinator? How do I locate a book? Could you please show us how to use the online catalog? And I would really emphasize that many libraries have adult, bilingual, and ESL sections and resources. In this additional resources slide, the second statement refers to adapting current curriculum. For example, in the Venture series for ESL that we use at our particular institution, each book has a unit called Shopping. For that unit, I could assign my students a particular item or items to shop for. Depending on my class size and computer availability, I could also break the students into groups and assign each of them an item to purchase. For example, I would ask students to find a girl's 24-inch bicycle for purchase. I would ask them to show 2 solid options to the class that were found from a reliable source. And then I'd ask them to show 1 option that's not from a reliable source. This type of assignment would ensure further practice concerning reliable and unreliable sources, but again, allows students to use their research skills for something practical and useful. Up here, I also have please visit the SIPDC training on YouTube for resources that have activities and project ideas for ESL students, and also using this training module and the available handouts for your classroom to use with your students. So have fun researching, and please do visit the SIPDC training website for activities for your students, both in the classroom and at home. Thank you.